If you're living in the United Arab Emirates illegally and are afraid of getting in trouble, worry no more. The Gulf nation launched a 3-month visa amnesty for those who've stayed in the country longer than they should have. It includes everyone from workers to students, even some born to parents who had overstayed their visas. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines have been waived. So, what's in it for the UAE? Well, to help answer that question and more, we have Neha Vora from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. She's an associate professor of anthropology at Lafayette College and specializes in the Indian diaspora and citizenship in Dubai. Neha, good to have you on the program. What's the true thinking, do you think, behind this amnesty in the UAE?
Okay, thanks for having me. I think it's sometimes we tend to think when we think about the Gulf states that these countries don't care about their workers, that they are very exploitative. But what we've seen over the last few years is that they have a symbiotic relationship with migrant workers, and they are working towards trying to improve labor conditions. So this is the third time that the UAE has had this kind of amnesty period where they are allowing people who have overstayed visas or are in the country illegally to come and get relief, to be allowed to either leave or to make themselves legal and get into the system in a way that they can be overseen, have legal employment. It's good for states because for several reasons. First of all, nobody wants migrant workers living in the kinds of conditions where they can be overexploited. It's not good for your residents, whether they're legal or whether they are migrants or citizens, for them to be living under conditions of exploitation. With all of the international pressure that's going on around the world, this is also a public relations issue. It's an issue that residents inside of the UAE care about. They don't like to live among such conditions of exploitation either. And it also helps the state to keep track of who's living within its borders. When you have amnesty, you have all of these people coming in who now you can fingerprint and you can get their biometrics and you can get their names and you have a better sense of who's actually living within your borders.
Right. And I know, I mean, you have very many levels of migrant laborers and expats within these societies. There are those who, have a really nice life as expats. There are those who are in the labor camps and so forth. What I want to understand from you is that, do they have good intentions to make it better now, while it's still exploitative and you still have these horrendous labor camps and you still have very many of them with very few rights? Is it just good intentions starting now, or have they actually improved the labor conditions over the past few years?
The sense that I get is that many of the Gulf states and the UAE as well, they are trying to create a system where things are more centralized. So the system that has been in place since the independence of the Gulf states, so the UAE gained independence in 1971, is something that scholars tend to call a kafala system, which you have an independent sponsor, or a kafil. So instead of you getting your visa through applying to the UAE government, you get a visa to work through either a citizen or a company. And what that creates is a system where the people that are responsible for the labor conditions are very diffuse, right? So and then you have more difficulty sometimes being able to ask for rights and get any kind of retribution if your rights are violated. So what the state has been doing is trying to centralize and trying to oversee a little bit more to make sure that workers' rights are more protected. And we've been seeing that happen more and more as labor reforms go into place, or reforms that are already in place are being overseen and implemented better. So I think that there is a good faith effort from within governments to try and improve labor conditions. The state is a very big, ambiguous thing. So to say that whether it has has some kind of morality is a very difficult thing
Right.
to say, right? I think there are actors within the state that are making good faith efforts.
Right. Okay. So you have the stage, you have construction companies, you have all different players and protagonists and antagonists within this system. Is it mainly because of a kind of crisis of conscience, and as you say, PR issues, pressure from the outside, or is it something more existential that they realize they need migrant workers a lot more than they thought they did in the past, and they can't be complacent about this thing because it's for the economy, it's for the sheer survival of the state?
I think that these countries definitely know that they need migrant workers. They know that they need migrants from at every single level, at the expert professional level, at the middle management level, and definitely at the more unskilled and semi-skilled level. And that's why they have these kinds of but that's why I think you see this kind of amnesty scheme that's in place right now. And they work closely with the governments of the sending states in order to make sure that these things get implemented.
Is naturalization possible at some point soon? Are we going to be seeing someone whose parents are from Kerala, who was maybe born in Dubai, who becomes a citizen of the UAE, or is that still a long way away?
I'm not in the business of making predictions, but I think that that is something that you're going to see a lot of resistance to from within the citizenry of the UAE. But naturalization is not something that doesn't happen. We see naturalization taking place at in certain circumstances. So, for example, within the context of sports, the teams that play for things like the World Cup, those team members are naturalized, and at higher levels of business and people who have long-standing relationships with rulers or who have according to governments contributed in some kind of like large way to the government. They do have. It's not that naturalization doesn't occur. It's just very very unique.
Okay, interesting times in the Gulf for laborers and locals alike. Neha, Vora, I thank you very much for joining us here on the Newsmakers.